Good morning, Sheddies!
Yo.
How's everyone doing today?
Yo.
Good morning, Rodney.
Good
morning, Sheddies! That's right.
That's weird.
How you doing? No, that was me. That was my thing over here. Say hi in the chat, guys, if you're showing up. We're happy to see you, as always. What?
Yo, nothing. Disrupt America.
I hope everyone's having it. What is today? Friday? Saturday. Today's Saturday. Happy Saturday.
Today is Saturday.
Time flies when you don't know what day it is. Today we're going to have Grant Smith on this morning from the Young Jurks, and then we're going to have, I want to make sure that I say her name right, Lisa Winthrow, because I accidentally put an N in there, which I'm going to fix on the on-air stuff, and Heather Marie is going to do her best to edit the title and description of the show. That'll be a challenge, maybe. She might not have had to do both before. Ruben, what's going on, man? It's good to see you, bud. All right, so I gotta fix those. We're gonna have Grant on first, but I'm gonna go and fix. Long time no see, Ruben. How you been?
What it do, Rube? How you doing, man?
And just in case Heather Marie's...
It's a very strange day.
Just in case Heather Marie's struggling, I'm going to see if I can go in and...
Always good to see you guys.
Edit that thing. Oh, you did. Cool. Did you fix could you fix both, the title and description? Nice. Awesome. How you feeling? It's like a weird, dreary day. It's supposed to kind of clear up, right? Is it cold?
Weird.
Is it cold right now?
Yeah,
but it's colder in
weird.
here than it is out there right now, I think. Oh, I meant to ask you to check things.
Oh. It's cold outside. Back before you know it.
So I actually, for once, put up that we have a tip thing. Maybe that's why today's so weird.
It's a tip thing.
We have a tip thing.
So apparently you can tip us.
Who knew?
Who knew? Or who's going to tip us? 'Cause
the thing that I don't know is, so when you buy merch, if you buy merch during the show, it will, hey Sharon, if you buy merch during the show, it'll show up a little notification in the show, which is kind of cool. I don't know if I have one for if you tip, but if somebody tips, we'll see it here, and then presumably I can like do something and maybe make something happen, which could be cool too.
Hey, where's Scott at? I'm finna send him a message like, yo.
So I was thinking about that, and, you know, we also...
I'm finna hit him up like, bro, I'm coming over.
Well, we were talking about doing a show at his shop, at the Nano Tank, and he was down with it. So I think that's what we should just say to him is like, yo, Scott. And then he'll be forced to say hi to us.
I think he disappeared on us.
Well, he was pretty busy.
Disappeared on that.
Oh, I didn't mean to click save on that because Grant's the first one coming up.
What?
Nothing? I'm
I'm
just
just-
enjoying your facial expressions.
I'm just sharing the show, trying to get some.
Yeah, I guess I should click share on some of that
Trying
stuff
to
too,
get
huh?
get some people drawn in. Comments looking a little dry today.
Yeah, I don't know. Hey, Rebecca, what's going on? I don't know. I think people are starting to come in now. Let's see. Sharing it out.
Hey, Zuck ain't playing with us, bro. Zuck don't want us to be great.
So, by the way, interestingly, there's a few groups that I've noticed that are no longer in my list because I kept, occasionally sharing to them, and then I guess I still shared to them, and then they were
They
like,
don't like it.
and they were like, yeah, get on out. So, I guess that's one way. I'd rather them kick me out of the group than mark me as spam. No one else is posting in them. Nobody's posting in them at all. I shouldn't say that. People are posting in them.
Yeah, I lost a lot of friends. That's cool. What?
Dangerous show. The world's most dangerous morning show.
Man.
Maybe we should what do you think about the name Disrupt America?
The world's most disruptive show.
What's up, George Armstrong? What's going on, dude? Good to see you. No, I mean Disrupt America. Like, what do you think about that name?
The world's most disrupt show.
You like it though? You like the name?
Yeah, I like it. It's just, ask the other crowd. Ask if they like it.
Well, I think it's been interesting. I think there's been a few people that are like, they hear the name of the show, they don't really know what it's about, and they're like, ooh, that sounds like, that sounds disruptive. There's some of these groups I share to, I guess they're cool with it. Who knows? There's a few I just stay away from. There's a few normal groups that have normal Miami.
I'm shaking the camera.
From all your lotion rubbing.
Oh yeah. Very interesting.
Empire State Normal still lets me post in there, so that's good. So I share it a bunch of places. Yeah, Ruben, what's wrong with are you having trouble ordering a Cushroom shirt? Because I was actually thinking about taking a bunch of them down and putting up some new stuff. I know there was a couple of people that were asking for different merch. But I am excited today, though, to have Grant Smith on from the Young Jurks, and he's going to give us some updates on what's going on in the local cannabis industry.
My man Grant.
Are the masks totally gone, Rebecca? Like when you go there, is the only thing you now see is a really overly priced hoodie? Did they finally take take our masks away? I know one person got to order masks.
Hold on, Amanda. How you just gonna say good morning to Mike? What? Am I not sitting right here? So I guess today you just feeling vanilla today. You're not into the chocolate. I guess everybody has their feelings every day. Change, I guess, because it's starting to see. Everybody's starting to fall in love with Mike a little bit more than me, I guess. I don't want to say good morning, Mike.
And
good morning, Eric, no more. It's all cool, though.
And we're also going to have on Lisa Winthrow.
It's all cool. I already knew I was an assistant.
And Lisa's an advanced practice registered nurse and owner of Palliativity Healthcare in Bedford, New Hampshire. And a member of TCMOB of New Hampshire. I don't know what that last one means, but it sounds impressive because it's got a lot of capital letters. And she's up for NECAN Medical Professional of the Year. dun, 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 in our ongoing series of interviewing NECAN nominees
Okay.
to help to celebrate our community.
Tasty.
Good morning, Avril.
Glad I'm looking tasty. Appreciate that.
Glad to see you, Avril.
Good morning.
So,
April.
knowing Grant, he is totally waiting. Yep. Hi, Grant.
Grant is on time every time. Good morning, Katrine.
Grant is always on time every time.
Okay,
He's
Grant
always
Diggity.
he's always waiting for us. And by the way, his stuff is so beautiful.
Grandmaster Grant. That's
Look
what I need
at
to call it. GMG.
Look at how beautiful all of his stuff is. It's so beautiful. I just need to like.
Grant, you can have that. You can have that title if you want.
What is it?
You're supposed to give. You're never supposed to create your own nicknames. And somebody gives you a nickname, and I think Grandmaster Grant is an incredible nickname.
That is a pretty dope nickname.
Come on, like just imagine everybody like, yo, Grandmaster Grant just walked in. Come on, that's a powerful, It's like everybody just shh, listen.
Let me come in here and I'm going to.
That's what everybody has to call
right.
Grant is Grandmaster Grant, GMG. That is
you're too kind. I don't know if I've ever had a nickname before. I did actually. In high school, I had a Spanish nickname.
Really?
I was 310 pounds, so they called me Grande.
They called you who?
Grande, big.
Grande. Like the size.
Yeah, and the Spanish teacher is very funny. I absolutely adored her. Her name was Miss Carol. She came up to me one day and said, I like to use Spanish names in class, but everyone calls you Grande, and I just wanted to know how you feel about that. And I said, well, if I didn't want them to do it, I certainly would have made that known by now.
Exactly.
But I always thought that was nice that she was considerate enough to ask me before making it my formal nickname in Spanish class.
Huh. That's crazy. I had so many nicknames, man. Like, I've had my first nickname, my very first one was Water. They used to call me Water. My coach used to call me Water because he said I had a water head. Like a water jug head, so he used to call me Water. And then, because I always had the biggest head on my team. Like, all my teams always had, like, the top 3 biggest heads. So it was kind of well known that my helmets were a little bigger than everybody else's. And people kind of didn't want to hit me for that reason. But my first nickname was Water. My second nickname was Headache. Another nickname I had from one of my teammates was T-Rex. Because he said I had like a T-Rex head, which was very degrading for me. That was a low point in my nickname career. Because people actually liked that. And people used to call me T-Rex, and I was so just sad because I'd be like chilling with some girls, and then one of my teammates go over like, yo, what up, T-Rex? And I'm like, that's not a good nickname to me.
Well, I'm glad you've reclaimed your Eric Martin name.
But
I've always thought that was fitting.
That was just like my high school group of nicknames. That wasn't even like college or NFL nicknames. So yeah, I went through quite a few. It's I'm not gonna tell them all, but yeah, it was some very interesting ones. But I can tell you most of them related to like reptiles, which is, I don't know why my teammates assume I look like, I could see why they say I play like a reptile, but looking like one is kind of sad for me. I was like, reptiles aren't very cute animals or pets, so.
I like bearded dragons. I think they're very nice.
Yeah, but would you like looking at a life size one
I don't know how I'd feel about that. Like a crocodile, I think I'd be.
So that
a little
was one of my
intimidating.
nicknames too. Crocodile.
Well, maybe it's an intimidating thing, you know.
So here's another funny one. Do you know Rugrats?
Yes, of course.
You know the dinosaur?
Reptar.
Yeah. Yeah, Reptar was a nickname.
We used to have a game in high school, right when we all started getting our driver's licenses at 16. To get the front seat of the car, you had to say Reptar. And the first person to say it would get the front seat in the car. I always thought that was funny.
So I have been marveling at Grant in his virtual background. This is the first time I'm seeing Grant come in live with his own setup. And by the way, people might not be able to notice, but Grant has an animated, like, there's
like
things.
A TV station.
There's things. Look, I was seeing it
It's like
before.
an
They
old school
stopped
TV.
Grant. They stopped for some reason, but they were all like there were things floating in the background too, and it was so cool.
Yeah, I've been playing around with some of these different programs today. I think I got the background moving again. Yeah, I've been playing around with some of these different programs today, and I thought, well, let me see if I can get onto a Zoom meeting with this all set up, and it worked. So thank you for being my guinea pig today, Michael.
Oh no, anytime. I love to, and actually now I'm seeing the little animated things come again. That's so cool. I had to like resize all of my stuff because I was like, I think I see something there, and I wanted to like drill in and see it. Very super cool. So Grant, before we dig into stuff, first of all, I just want to say hi to Dean, who is back, and Dan Skelton, who we haven't seen in a while. So hello to you guys, and thanks for being here. Grant, one problem that I sort of ran into today, and I was, as usual, we started a little late because of me, and then of course, you're always on time, so I wanted to just bring you on, and I didn't start the contest thing, but there's sort of an issue today, and maybe Ruben, who's in the audience, can help. Ruben, can you? I'm totally putting you on the spot, and if this is the last time you ever want to help, I would understand because I'm putting you on the spot. But can you be our prize sponsor for today? Because I woke up this morning and I realized that I'm short on prizes, and then I'm running late, and now everyone's here expecting me to do a prize contest, and I don't. And by the way, Ruben, I have a backup.
Our prizes, we're gonna start giving away advice.
Oh, that's funny. Ruben, thank you, Ruben. I appreciate it.
Daily quotes. We're gonna start sending them quotes to make them feel good.
And
If you have a contest, I might be able to give you one, Michael, as well.
wait, you have a what?
I might have a contest. It actually might be a pretty fun one.
Oh, okay. So lay it on us.
Over my shoulder, there's 3 books lined up on my bookshelf. And one of the books I've mentioned on the show before. But if anyone can get the title of any of the 3 books, I think that would be an interesting contest.
Okay. Okay, I'm trying to remember.
Can you just zoom in on your camera a little bit so I can?
Yeah, and actually, I have it pretty large, and I can't see the titles. So I like this. And by the way, Ruben, I know you're still watching. Just so you know, we have your logo. We have your logo running at the beginning and the end of every show, and we have because you're a friend of the show, and we appreciate it. And Mary Palmer and some other folks too. But anyway, we appreciate all of you guys. So today's prize is going to be a cool CBD thing from Irva CBD, and we've had Ruben's stuff on here before, including his hand sanitizer, which is probably still floating around here someplace. So, and Grant was so gracious as to provide today's contest. So for today, and Grant, can you do me a favor and while I'm finishing this up, can you
Sure,
just
how
quickly
about-
type to Heather and let her know what those titles are so that she can be looking for them?
Yeah, sure. And the one other hint I'll give is that for those of you who watch the show a lot, the title that I referenced was in the context of me telling Michael and Eric an anecdote about the origin of the state of the state of Virginia, the name of the state of Virginia.
Okay.
You guys probably don't even remember it because you do so many shows.
I'm definitely not gonna remember.
We do a lot of shows.
I do remember the shows you're on, Graham, but I just let's just say that I've cracked a few eggs up here, and the shell is kind of loose. So yeah.
So,
Don't worry.
so by the way, today's awesome prize is going to be Irva and Grant. I know it's actually, and you've never complained. You never complain about anything, but I realize that when you're the sort of the subject of our contest, it means that you're not allowed to win.
Oh, I don't enter any contests anyway. I would prefer it go to other people.
So let's see.
Why you don't like winning?
No, it's not that. It's just I won $1,000 on a scratch ticket when I was 18, and that was more than enough winning for me in terms of that. So
What, $1,000? I won like $500 on a scratch ticket, but it was a $20 scratch ticket, so I don't really count that. $20 scratch tickets, you supposed to win that much. But I want to win. I've won probably like $20 on a $1 ticket, which was a good payout. Good morning, Jessica.
Oh, I'm
Have,
throwing. So Grant, I'm sorry. I've been busy tippity tapping away because I want to.
Isn't Jessica JT's?
Yeah, Jessica is. Yes.
Yeah.
Good morning, Jessica.
Have Sawyer been doing his push-ups, Jessica? And have JT been doing them? I know if you know if JT's been doing. JT say he been doing, but I don't believe it. I need some proof. I need some.
Okay, so to win today's contest, which is Irva Celestial Oil Tincture and CBD Sanitizer, you must guess the title of one of 3 books on Grant's bookshelf. But here's the twist, Grant. Winner will be the last person to guess one of the 3 titles, not the first. And I love doing this, which means that, and Grant, what I've done, I don't know if you've seen it, but at the end of the show, what I'll do is I'll put up a little timer that's maybe like 2 minutes long. And then basically, because we have the comments coming in on the screen, we just say the official winner. And by the way, it's weird because there's like a disconnect between when the comments show up on the screen and when you type them in real life. So people can't even like do the real like eBay last second bid thing because it doesn't work like that. So the official winner is the person who appears on the screen when it hits 0. And I kind of like it because, you know, we've done probably 60-something giveaways, and now I'm turning it into a little, like, I'm making it a little bit more competitive. Anyway.
I really like that concept. I'm just sending the 3 titles over to Heather, so give me about 10 more seconds.
Yeah, you know, and it gives people, like, it really gives people a chance. So even if they're...
So he's been in his mind the last few days, and my man is always working, both in life and in...
All right, I sent the titles over, so
Jessica,
there you go.
Uh-oh.
You keep them type of things to you.
So everyone, you got to guess books, and I like everyone's guesses. And Grant, at some point,
That's a good one.
at the end of your segment, maybe you can give us like you'll give us another hint or 2 or something like that for the people. Especially Grant, considering that it's the last person to guess correctly and not the first, which I love. I love. It really screws with people.
And if you want to
In the best
win
ways.
and you have a creative and critical mind, I've given you more than enough information to actually get one of the titles based on the hint I gave earlier. So.
Aha. Very good.
Which
Well-
means if you don't know, your ass ain't been paying attention.
It means you got to rewind. You got to rewind a little bit. So Grant, we're so lucky that every Saturday you're supposed to join us, and that's when I remember to coordinate with you. I know you're always willing to come on. And so forgive me for last weekend. We had sort of a crazy. By the way, I love some of the guesses that are coming through because somebody just guessed that you have The Art of War on your shelf. Have you ever read it, by the way?
I've read summaries of the principles, but I've never read the text. I've always wanted to.
It's actually fascinating. I digress. Grant, we're so lucky that every Saturday you're scheduled to join us for a segment where you update us with what's going on in the local cannabis industry. Let us know of some changes or things that we can look forward to. And today is no different. So thank you for joining us today, Grant from the Young Jurks. We appreciate it.
Sure thing. Always happy to be here.
Grandmaster Grant. I'm telling you, that's gonna stick, Grant. We gotta just keep pushing, keep saying it. People's gonna start relating it, and the next thing you know, we're gonna have a cheer.
It reminds me of that movie, The Da Vinci Code. The organization that keeps Jesus' bloodline alive. The head of it is called the Grand Master.
Ooh, okay.
Oh
okay,
my God!
I can't wait.
Ruben just bought a T-shirt. I'm sorry. I'm
Ruben
so excited.
Dropped 25 buckos.
No, Grant, you don't understand. When somebody buys something during the show, a little like drone flies in and it drops off a package that explodes and says, in this case, Ruben just bought a T-shirt, which is really
appreciate you, Ruben. Can't wait to try it on.
I'm gonna just because I'm a jerk, can't wait to try it on. I'm gonna play it again. Look, there it is, going right on my head. Ooh, it just dropped a box on my head. And thank you, Ruben. I totally am so sorry I interrupted. You guys were talking.
No, I was just saying Grandmaster Grant gonna stick.
So Grant, there's been lots of stuff going on lately. Why don't you update us with some of the best bits from the last time that we spoke?
Over this past week, there was a Cannabis Control Commission meeting that happened on Wednesday, I believe it was. You can catch the full replay. It was 4 hours and 40 minutes or so on my Facebook profile. I broadcast. The meetings right now are only occurring for the Cannabis Control Commission digitally. They're not broadcasting them. So I take the feed and broadcast it out for folks, so there's an archive of it. And during that meeting, there were only two. There were a lot of important issues that were discussed. As folks know, there was some incidents involving vandalism of medical and adult use cannabis stores downtown, separate from the protests last week. And so that was something that they were discussing. They actually didn't do that in public, though. They did that in what's called executive session. And so we don't actually know what they talked about related to that. The second thing they talked about was expediting pediatric certification for medical cannabis patients who are under 18. As folks might know, this is a very important issue because there are some children, especially children with seizures disorders or cancer, who vitally need access to cannabis for life-saving purposes. And right now, to get a pediatric certification, it requires at minimum, and I've spoken to certified healthcare providers in Massachusetts to get this time frame, 5 months. And the reason why it takes 5 months to get certified as a pediatric patient compared to 24 hours for an adult medical cannabis patient is that the forms for a pediatric patient until now have only been able to be filled out on paper. So hard forms had to be filled out by 2 separate doctors, one of whom had to be a certified practicing pediatrician with a specialty in the disorder that the child has. The second had to be a certified medical cannabis doctor. Both forms had to be filled out, as I said, by hand, sent to the commission by hand, reviewed, and then approved. And that process was taking 5 months. So at the meeting on Wednesday, Cannabis Control Commission Executive Director Sean Collins gave an update where he let folks know that starting, he hoped, June 15th, but he guaranteed no later than early July, the process for applying for pediatric medical cannabis certification is going to move online to the patient portal. Now, this is a big change, and we don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but the reason it's a big change is because Mr. Executive Director said specifically that the reason this change was being made was to expedite the process in terms of the timeline for obtaining pediatric certifications, while also increasing access to life-saving medication for pediatric patients. And his insight that I think is probably what drove the commission to take this issue up was that some of these children, especially with the Dravet syndrome or with cancer, are on a time-limited basis as to their need for this medication. And every day they're denied the medication, they're basically suffering an irreparable harm. And so that's why the commission, I think, took this step, because they want to make sure that children who are suffering right now do not have to go through a 5-month wait period to get access to their medical cannabis. So that was a very big and important update. And then the third update was related to testing labs. One of the, sort of headlines was that there's going to be 3 new testing labs in Massachusetts, one in Holyoke, one in Dracut, and one in Marlborough, if my memory serves me correct. Now, what's very interesting is not so much that there's 3 new testing labs, although that's a good thing, because the more testing labs, the faster cannabis products, both regulated and personal, can be tested, which is good. That also reduces the stress on the existing testing labs, so they don't have to have their technicians working long hours, etc. But what was interesting about that discussion about one of the testing labs was actually not related to testing of cannabis at all. One of the testing labs, I believe it was in Holyoke, it was called Analytics LLC, I think. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. That testing lab had something called a diversity plan, which every applicant in the state of Massachusetts for any type of cannabis-related license has to have in the adult use sphere. And as part of their diversity plan, they wanted to provide lines of credit to marijuana enterprises in the Commonwealth, so marijuana businesses in the Commonwealth. Well, Commissioner Britt McBride saw that and said, I want to attach a condition on this provisional license for this testing lab, because I don't understand, and this is Britta McBride speaking, I don't understand how a testing lab could give lines of credit to marijuana businesses without establishing a financial relationship with those businesses. And then she went on to point out that state law explicitly prohibits marijuana testing labs from having any kind of financial relationship with any business that they provide testing services for. So the reason I bring that up is even though it's not a huge deal and not a lot of people will notice it, it's a sign from the commission that they are paying very close attention to any relationships between marijuana businesses in the Commonwealth to ensure there are no conflicts of interest or violations of law.
That makes sense. Grant, on point 2 having to do with medicinal certifications for pediatric patients, is the requirement for pediatric patients that they go to a pediatric doctor as opposed to many of the recommendation services that are out there?
2 doctors. They need 2 doctors. One doctor has to be a certified pediatrician, a board licensed pediatrician. I believe they also have to have a specialty in the disorder. And then the other certifying practitioner can be just a cannabis provider. Both, that is the only type of medical cannabis application that requires 2 doctors.
And so under the new proposal, though, will there still be a requirement for the traditional pediatric doctor to be a part of the process?
That is state law, so yes, that's not going to change. The only thing that's going to change, and this will make all the difference, is the way that the process is, the way the forms are processed by the commission. The lag right now is not so much that there needs to be 2 doctors. Parents can go to 2 doctors. The lag is that it takes the commission 5 months to receive the paper forms and review them. I would foresee the process being reduced to at most 2 to 4 weeks once this shifts to the patient portal.
Yeah, I guess just for me, I have a disconnect with, why is one process fine for all adults out there, but then anyone under 18 requires a significantly more burdensome process to have access to medicine?
You would have to ask the authors of the medical ballot question, but I I know that in 2012, things were a lot more conservative in Massachusetts compared to after 2016 when adult use passed. So, for example, the medical law is lacking a lot of the things that we see in the adult use law that people really like. For example, dating back to 2012, there has never been any social equity or economic empowerment programs for licensure or ownership of medical cannabis licenses. That's resulted in basically 100% white-owned companies in that sphere. And what's really interesting on that note, actually, is that I've been pressing the commission to provide us with demographic data for ownership of medical licenses, which they apparently have not been collecting until now. But I am hoping that going forward, as these medical companies start renewing their licenses, we are going to find out that demographic data, because that's the first step to making an equity program for medical cannabis licenses. And as folks may know, there's a bill out there right now to de-verticalize medical cannabis licenses in the Commonwealth. Currently, to run a medical cannabis operation, you have to cultivate, manufacture, produce, and retail your products all under the same license, versus adult use, where you can apply for individual licenses to do those specific types of tasks. Mm-hmm. There's a proposal to break up the verticalized medical requirement, and I believe the bill number is 4523 right now, H4523 in the Massachusetts legislature. I'm proposing that that bill be amended to add a 3 to 5 year priority period during which those new deverticalized licenses would be issued only to social equity or economic empowerment applicants. And the reason I bring this up, not because I wanted to highlight that sort of tangent policy point, but because I wanted to highlight the disparity in the way the medical program functions compared to how the adult use program functions. Because there are a lot of other areas of the medical program as well that are lacking or falling behind where the adult use program is right now. And so whether it be easing access to pediatric certifications, creating some kind of equity mandate, or in general paying more attention to those structures of the medical program, I think there's a lot of positive right now, but these breakdowns are a reflection of the fact that there's a lot more work to be done.
I thought there was one thing that I had been thinking of this week that I thought to... I think it had to do with the proposed bill and...
the Social Equity Loan Fund. So the Social Equity Loan, see, I knew what you were going to ask without you having to ask it. The Social Equity Loan Fund is another important, it's another important piece of legislation for folks to pay attention to, because we've talked so much on this show, and I know you've talked with applicants, policymakers, elected officials, and others about how the two biggest barriers to access for smaller companies in the adult use and medical use cannabis industries in terms of ownership are, one, municipal barriers to entry, because there's no municipal structure for equity priority or anything like that, although I do want that to change as well. And then two, access to capital. Now, unfortunately, what happens in this marketplace, in the cannabis marketplace in particular, is that because the application process is so onerous, especially in Massachusetts, many companies go bankrupt before they get through the application process, which means when they have to rely on private vulture capitalists to get funding, oftentimes those vulture capitalists use that opportunity to roll up the smaller companies into bigger companies. We've seen this in Philadelphia. There's some great reporting in the Philadelphia Inquirer that talks about how those big companies use that exact strategy to obtain a market position that allows them to roll up those smaller companies. So to stop that from happening in Massachusetts, there's been this great proposal spearheaded by the co-chair of the Joint Cannabis Policy Committee on Beacon Hill, Senator Sonia Chang Diaz, with help from advocacy groups and local activists and otherwise. And that bill is S2650. And what S2650 would do is create a social equity loan fund to give no interest loans to equity applicants and empowerment applicants who are looking to open cannabis businesses. By doing that, that would prevent those applicants from being preyed on by those vulture capitalists, while also giving them the kind of sustainable funding that would allow them to retain full ownership and control when they open their businesses. In turn, they can pay back the loans at no interest, and then those funds can be used in perpetuity to continue opening companies going forward. And the reason it's so important for folks to reach out to their senators and representatives to support this bill is that big cannabis does not want this. The only way this kind of bill is going to get passed that truly creates a level playing field in the cannabis market in terms of ownership of companies is if the grassroots rises up in one cohesive voice and says, we need to pass 2650. We need to amend it to make sure that there's loan forgiveness. And we need to expand the funding so that 100% of the funds dedicated to S2650 go to that no interest loan program. So thank you for bringing it up, Michael, because only with the support of the grassroots is that kind of bill going to get passed.
Yeah, it's good to see a lot of our community stepping up to support and and encourage folks to reach out to their representatives to help to support the bill and make sure that gets passed.
Oh, certainly, and I cannot thank you enough for bringing it up, as I said, because there really is a large amount of corporate influence in the lawmaking and regulatory process in the Commonwealth. And, people will say, well, that's just how Massachusetts is. But the reality is that the cannabis industry in this state, in particular the grassroots community, is driving the kind of policy changes that lobbyists are looking at and saying, how is it even possible? And the reason why the grassroots community has been able to pull that off is because of the integrity that proposals like S2650 and others have, because they look at market problems without trying to figure out a way to solve them in the interest of any one company. And that is the key to legitimate public policy.
Well, I think it's beyond time that we actually did something tangible for EE and SE applicants. I think a lot of the help that or assistance they've been provided often came with caveats or even potentially a double-edged sword, and wasn't always necessarily available. It'll be great to see something that can actually tangibly assist EE and SE applicants, especially on the EE side where we've seen so few folks actually break through. Oh, I remember now one other point that I wanted to ask about was the proposed ratio. I believe there's a ratio proposed within the bill as well.
Yeah, so this is kind of a policy discussion that's been going on for a while. We talked a little bit about how the two barriers to entry are capital and municipal barriers. And those municipal barriers are, the reason why it's so hard to get over those municipal barriers is there's no universal standard that requires local cities and towns to prioritize equity in any way. And so what that means is that a lot of cities and towns, except for a few standouts like Cambridge and kind of Boston, have taken almost every other town has not put any structures in place to ensure equitable ownership. Therefore, some people are proposing a couple different approaches to how a mandatory municipal equity mandate could be structured. The reason there's some nuance to this discussion is that there's a lot of overlapping interest involved. There's the Massachusetts Municipal Association, which represents the cities and towns who like to have a lot of say over their own process. There's the medical dispensaries who don't want equity periods unless they can be included, which, as we talked about, doesn't make a lot of sense because they're 100% white owned almost. And so basically those two factors together have made it hard to propose a mandatory municipal equity structure that would really have teeth. So one proposal is to force municipalities when issuing licenses to do a 1-to-1 ratio, which means for every one non-equity company, whether that non-equity company is a medical dispensary or a regular applicant, they have to issue a license for an economic empowerment or social equity applicant. However, I want to go one step further. I want to propose a clause in state law that would mandate that cities and towns, or at least allow them to provide a 2 to 3 year period during which only EEs and SEs would be licensed. Right now, state law says that they can do that kind of period, as we know from the case that's been going on in Cambridge, which is something we should talk about before I go as well. But if there were explicit wording in state law clarifying that cities and towns could have that kind of exclusive period for equity applicants, I think we'd see that ratio of RMD priority to EE priority who have been approved go down from 200 to 10, which is the current ratio, 200 RMDs to 10 EEs, to something like 200 to 100 very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, and certainly providing that window of exclusivity would allow for, because even instituting a ratio now, there's already so many existing licenses out there that, I think that instituting a period of exclusivity would actually, help to start to even that out. So I think that's a great idea. I think that the ratio has been something that a lot of us have been fighting for a long time, and the problem is the longer you wait, the less effective that ratio being put into place is, as new businesses were able to open up, in the meantime. So that's all great stuff, Grant. We really appreciate you coming on with us today. It's always great to see you.
Anytime. Really appreciate the time. And I guess what I will say is, for next time, we will go more in depth on the Cambridge situation, because one last piece of information I forgot to give as an update is that if you have not gone to Dan Adams' Twitter feed, the reporter from the Boston Globe, you absolutely should. For those listening, he has a great thread really breaking down why Revolutionary Clinic's decision to try to attach their brand to the Black Lives Matter movement this week was the epitome of hypocrisy. And as folks know, as we've talked about on this show before, when the city of Cambridge tried to propose a 2-year period, just like we just talked about, where only EEs would be able to get their local license, that RMD, Revolutionary Clinics, tried to sue Cambridge. And although they won it first, thankfully, an appeals court judge, for the time being, threw out their victory that they got and reinstated that priority period. So we'll hopefully keep a close eye on that case going forward, and I'll be able to provide an update on the next episode.
Thanks so much, Grant. We really appreciate your time, and we look forward to having you back on next week.
Yes, thank you for all the time today. I had a great time.
Great.
Grandmaster Grant.
We'll talk to you soon, Grant. Grant Smith. Love him. Appreciate him coming on. Our second guest actually was coming on a little earlier today.
How you doing, man? DJ Perker Stenny.
DJ Steady, what's going on, dude? Where is he?
Hello.
Hi, Lisa. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing very well. I'm just going to fix your titles here, and then we'll be ready to go. You look great, by the way. We're not always so lucky that everyone's apparently using great equipment and put themselves in great lighting and everything else, because
I've been doing telehealth now for the last 13 weeks with my patients, so I have to have it.
Lisa Winthrow, we're so lucky to have you joining us today as part of our ongoing series of highlighting NECAN nominees. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, Lisa.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So, Lisa, and while I'm about to say it, I realize that I need to put up, if I can find it, a little thing here that says that you're nominated for NECAN Medical Professional of the Year. Congratulations.
Right, thank you.
Right.
And so you're based out of New Hampshire, is that correct?
Yes, I am. Palliativity is in Bedford, New Hampshire.
Okay, and why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the work that you've been doing up in New Hampshire?
Cannabis-wise, is what I have to say is it's still challenging. As you know, I know that you've been doing some podcasts about this. There's still such a social stigma, and in the layperson arena as well as the medical arena. I am a palliative care nurse practitioner. I have my own medical practice. So I tend to take care of some pretty seriously sick people. Mm-hmm. They've been using cannabis for many, many years. They're the ones who really started teaching me. I have some pretty complex symptom management cases, and many of them use cannabis. So, the program in New Hampshire has been for the last 4.5 years. And it's still, there are times you still feel like you're, hitting your head against a wall. It's misunderstood. So I've tried, I certify many patients in the therapeutic cannabis program, and I also do speaking engagements to try to educate medical professionals.
Oh, that's excellent. So as far as the education side has gone, and really as far as your medical practice has gone, how has the pandemic environment affected your work, and how you're able to deal with patients, but also how they're able to sort of have access to you for help?
Well, the pandemic environment has been challenging across the board in the healthcare system. Though, for the last 13 weeks, have been seeing patients through telehealth, through the telehealth platform. And I found it kind of interesting. I expected to have less patients, and certainly not all of my patients are cannabis, but I'm finding since the pandemic, since they don't have to come physically see you again because there's that stigma, I'm getting more therapeutic cannabis referrals because right now, because of the governor's executive order, we're allowed to see them by telehealth. Many patients in New Hampshire didn't realize there was a program, and they were using the recreational dispensaries in Massachusetts, which were closed for a time. They just recently opened back up. So that was enlightening to me. But still, the number of people who were unaware that New Hampshire had a therapeutic cannabis program was kind of shocking to me.
Yeah, I certainly had never heard it. And so I guess sort of speaking about surprising access to cannabis in New Hampshire, New Hampshire has traditionally taken a conservative stance towards cannabis. And so certainly New Hampshire has sort of, I don't want to say fallen behind, but certainly taken longer to reach certain places that other states have. I know even in Massachusetts, we like to think that we're the sort of model that other states should be following for a lot of our cannabis reform. That isn't necessarily always the case. I know there's always more work to be done. What are some of the challenges today that folks are facing in New Hampshire for access to cannabis, both, and not just recreationally, but both recreational and medicinal? And the reason why I conflate the two is because a lot of folks, there's still stigma attached to the idea of cannabis and medicine. So a lot of folks don't admit to themselves that they use cannabis medicinally, and so they'd prefer to pay a little more for it recreationally. But that said, what are some of the problems for access that folks are having in New Hampshire, and what are some of the steps you guys are trying to take to help ease that?
So that's a great question. I want to just comment on, people who are using it, thinking they're using it recreationally and don't realize it's medicinal. Again, I'll go back to the pandemic. There were many that I've met in the last 12 weeks who all of a sudden were without, and they realized how much it was helping them, how it increases their functionality, their ability to, whether it's pain or anxiety, whatever reason they're taking it for. So the challenges in New Hampshire, we're working on it. I'm on the Therapeutic Cannabis Medical Oversight Board. I'm trying to increase certifiable conditions for the program. That's different. I would love to see across, countrywide more uniformity as far as certifying conditions and kind of the process. In New Hampshire, there used to be, it's changed now, but it used to be that we had to have a 3-month relationship with the patient before we could even certify them for cannabis. Oh, wow. That has gone away. So that went away right around Thanksgiving. So now we can, when you see the patient the first time, if that is what we feel is their best plan of care going forward, we can certify them. Then it takes usually a couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks for them to get their card and then access to the dispensaries. In New Hampshire, There's 4 dispensaries. The patient has to choose one. They're only allowed to go to one. There has been some, yeah, and there has been some concern about that. There's been some legislation trying to go through, but again, COVID has changed that because it kind of shut legislative down. So now that has to wait until, I believe, next year to allow the patient to go to any of the 4. So, things like that. And the conditions, again, from one state to the next. Affordability is a huge issue as far as accessibility. Many patients can't afford it. It's expensive. So you see them go into the New Hampshire dispensaries and maybe, figure out what works best for them. And then many of them go to Maine, the Maine dispensaries with the card, your New Hampshire therapeutic cannabis card, you can access the medicinals in Maine. That is something that I would love to see going forward. That's different from state to state. New Hampshire and Massachusetts, if you have a card from another state, they're not allowed into the medicinal dispensaries. I'd love to see, uniformity, because there's other states, Maine, California, those kinds of things. They allow people who have cards to go into the dispensaries.
Absolutely. And what's New Hampshire's stance today on both home grows and caregiving?
Right now, that's a no. There's current legislation. Again, what I've been told is because of COVID and it kind of shut down the legislative sessions, the cannabis things that were presented are going to have to wait until next legislative session. As far in New Hampshire right now, the only places that are allowed to grow it are the cultivation sites for the dispensaries. Again, I'd love to see uniformity there from state to state. Other states have, once you have your card, you're allowed to grow. And again, this is different, X number of plants. What I guess I would like people who are naysayers to that thought, not everyone, and I mean, I have certified many patients. Not everyone is interested in growing it, but the people who are, I mean, I'll give you an example. I have a patient I have many patients on opioids and all kinds of other medications. Most of them, once they get comfortable in their cannabis routine, they've been able to peel off all kinds of pharmaceuticals, opioids included. And the challenge is when they go on vacation, this is why uniformity is a must. If they're going to leave the state, you're not supposed to fly with it because TSA is federal. Okay. So some patients sneak it, some patients go without. I have actually patients who've been comfortable off opioids, off, benzos, psychotropics, muscle relaxers for a long time. They go on vacation, they can't take it with them. So I'm having to put them back on opioids just so they can go on vacation. So that is something that needs to change. I mean, that's just inherently wrong.
And really dangerous too, because for folks that have maybe been weaning themselves off of opioids, the sort of like physical dependence on them, that having been weaning, like they could suddenly be using more than a dosage for them that maybe they were used to, and now, maybe they're not so used to it, or even just, it's scary, especially just with this sort of higher likelihood of overdose or just sort of poor bad responses to taking it. So. And even just from an addiction standpoint, for a lot of people, like, what a horrible thing for a lot of folks that are trying to trying to recover from addiction, and then suddenly being told their only option is to go ahead and just take it for a week. I mean, it's just
and it's crazy because, like you said, they may have been off of it for a while, and what dose do you start them back on? Certainly not what they were, but is it going to be enough for while they're going? I mean, it's just to me, it's this unnecessary game that you're playing with once you have someone comfortable. And I've had patients surrender their disability and come off disability because their functionality has improved so much to the point using cannabis that they're doing much better. And then so it's a setback to have to take them off of that just so they can travel because it's federally illegal. I mean, that's a problem.
Yeah, well, and Pearson in the audience brings up a good point too about growing one's own supply, and just that it can be expensive to start, and not everyone is successful at first, and we've seen, at least in Massachusetts, that a lot of folks have expectations around what they'll be able to grow, and often it comes in so much less that it's not just sort of disheartening to the idea of continuing to try to grow, but really you're
Right.
just left without enough medicine, and now you're still going out and having to buy medicine
Right.
when even the medicinal prices for some are not, make it so that it's really unattainable for them as well.
Right. And I'll have, another example from a patient. She was on lots of opioids. We weaned her off. She was perfectly comfortable on, her regimen of cannabis. And she and her husband did have the means, but then her pain escalated and she needed more. She spent $14,000 in 1 year on cannabis products, and it was to the point where she couldn't afford that anymore. Okay, she would love to grow it, and so she's had to go back. She's had to go back on some opioids because she can't afford the medicine that she needs. So that, to me, is a perfect example of, then again, not everyone wants to do it, and contrary to what people think, it's not like just putting the seed in and it grows like a weed. There's certain protocols and care involved in it if you want to do it right. And not everyone's, it's not like if you pass that patients can grow it, that they can increase their own access to it. I think the concern is from the police and whatnot, it's going to be just diversion, massive diversion. And I just don't see that with the patients that I have.
And frankly, most of the people that I know that bother to go out and get a medicinal license need so much of it that they're not going to be converting anything. They need it. In fact, most of them I know, not only, and in Massachusetts, I don't believe that they're. I forget the exact sort of rules or stipulations around it. But I know that there's cases where if you have a medicinal card, it affects, I thought it affected how much you were able to actually purchase, within a certain time period, or and it just becomes this like, or that if you have it, you're not supposed to go to the dispensary. They might not be keeping track, but like if you have a home grow, I don't believe you're supposed to go to the dispensary anymore medicinally. And it's just.
I don't even. I've lost track because it keeps getting kind of pushed down next. So if someone is able to speak on that, calling in or whatever, I've lost track to the home grow. I think last I heard it was 6 plants, six plants and X number of seedlings.
Well, and
yeah,
in Massachusetts, if you have 2 adults in the house, you're allowed 6 in flower and 6 in veg. If you're only 1 adult in the house, you're only allowed 6 plants. Period. And I mean, really, when you do the math, by the way, even if you're, no matter how you're breaking it down, like that amount of what a normal person is going to get from each plant is so little,
right.
in the grand scheme of consumption, that like. They've made it a little silly. You really need to have some expertise.
It's not enough for me.
What's that?
I said it's not enough for me.
No, it's people don't understand. One plant isn't going to get you huge amounts. You need, but see, I'm more scientific. I'm not a grower, so I can't speak to how much average would be good for someone. I need to let someone else. That's someone else's expertise.
Well, and so a lot of times you might, I think
I go through an ounce in 3 days.
Yeah.
Well, and on one plant, you're lucky to probably get 1 ounce when you're a new person. So now you're talking about 6 ounces. That sounds like a lot, but that's over the course of basically 5 months or so. By the time you grow and you let it sit even for a few more weeks, so that it's actually, a bit more enjoyable and goes down easier. And it's, you know, and never mind the fact that a lot of the people that need the medicine the most aren't necessarily physically able to take care of those amount of plants on a regular basis
They need the
effectively.
caregivers, right? They need the caregivers.
Exactly, exactly.
You have to understand, in New Hampshire, a designated caregiver, that's something else that we need uniformity with across the country, because in most other states, when you say caregiver, it means you're growing for somebody. In New Hampshire, a designated caregiver cannot grow. They are someone who can go to the dispensary with or for one of the qualified patients.
So it's
So, you know,
so like a delivery person that only gets to have one customer is what you're saying.
well, I think they can have up to 5, but you
Oh,
know,
okay.
you have to be, but they're not allowed to grow. Growing in New Hampshire is right now is unfortunately a no.
Yeah, it's yeah, and we have people in the audience that are saying, you know, 30 to 50 grams a week is what they go through. We have somebody else that says they can go through an ounce in a day,
Right.
depending on their symptoms and what's bothering them. And
Right.
somebody
But
else is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
we need to realize cannabis, because it's federally illegal. I have to be careful how I speak about it in medical terms. But when you're using, whether you're using cannabis or prescription medications to manage your symptoms, it's not the same dose for everybody, and it's not the same medication. So, i.e., the strains and you know, hybrids and that kind of thing, and the cannabinoid combinations for cannabis. What works for one, it doesn't necessarily work for the other. So there's a lot of what I call guinea pigging involved in dosing. I mean, some people need a lot more than others, and some people are very THC sensitive. So, you know, we have to really work with that to increase that therapeutic window so they can tolerate it at all. So, you know, it's not and it shouldn't be, and neither is ordering medication, a cookie cutter approach to everyone needs this.
Well, and you know, one other thing that I think a lot of people, because there's such a long checklist of sort of like things that really need to be addressed or fixed or whatever to sort of help the idea of people having access to cannabis as medicine.
Right.
Just never mind the fact that like the way everything is set up, you know, I have a family member who's prescribed opioids. They pay almost nothing in copays per month. And now what we're asking them to do is to stop taking those opioids, which are, by the way, like, yes, very dangerous in the long run, but also super convenient, right? And there's no real stigma around my family member going to a restaurant, and I get it, we're all inside right now, but going to a restaurant and pulling out a pill and taking a pill before they have their lunch versus smoking some pot before they, or just consuming in any way before, like
Right.
that, before they go in to eat lunch.
Right.
But really what we've done is, and it's not even just for like the poorest or the most financially destitute of our citizens, it's really for a whole segment of folks that like don't have a disposable income. When you're talking about, and I say disposable income because when you're, even in Massachusetts, when you're talking about medicinal cannabis, you're talking about $200 an ounce or a little bit more for an ounce of medicinal pot. And even, you know, when you're talking about a replacement for opioids, like it does require a reasonable amount of cannabis to sort of replace the effects of those opioids. Like the opioids are deadly, but they're also deadly effective, right? And so now
Well, for some people,
well,
for
and I get it. There's also the dependence on opioids, and people increase that load and everything else. And but I guess what I'm saying is that, you know, even just from a financial standpoint, you're asking people to sort of like take a big healthy step in their life that's also going to like cost them an amount of money that like most like even people with like healthy disposable incomes like don't often have, you know, an extra car payment per month or more, like car payment, insurance, and more, right? And
right.
then
In New Hampshire, you know, I haven't looked at the prices lately, but I think for an ounce in New Hampshire, it's $3.50 or more. If someone can comment on that, but you know, versus they go to Maine and Maine has had a program much longer, and I'm certainly not saying everyone go to Maine, but I'm speaking. I tend to speak more anecdotally, not with evidence-based data, but from my patients, what my patients tell me, the effects my patients are having. And many of them go to Maine for a couple of reasons. One, Maine has had a program much longer than any of the other New England states. They have had a program since, I think, 99. And they have a much wider variety of products, including the different delivery methods. They have a much more consistent availability of the same product. That's a big concern of patients in New Hampshire. Like, they'll find something that they like, and then they'll go back because they're only allowed to go to the one dispensary. They'll go back to get, say, Granddaddy Purple, okay? And that's been working for them the last 2 or 3 times, and then they go back and they don't have it. So they find something comparable, and then the next time they go back, they don't have either of the two. And so, patients are telling me that when they go to Maine, they have much more consistent availability of products that they're looking for, and it's significantly cheaper. And so, it's a struggle that we're going to have to figure out. And again, if we had more uniformity, I think much of this would change.
Well, and so we have one person in the comments saying that in New Hampshire, a medicinal ounce of weed is about $400 without a discount. We had somebody else comment that they had seen it was about $350 an ounce for an ounce of medicinal cannabis, which is astronomical, which is more than what the street price is for the gray market. And we're, and it's silly because once you're a cultivator at that level, you have an economy of scale where, like, testing your cannabis and following compliance isn't that expensive. We know that everyone's making lots of money in the legal cannabis field, and it's just I'll tell you what seems to be a shame, and this is just sort of my anecdotal, like, maybe what I think that I'm noticing is that in states where they finally allow the business side of cannabis to be equitable is when prices can finally drop. So once they let the little guy in to start to try to fight for to have a piece of the cannabis business industry, is when they're happy to start to commoditize pricing and then make it a bit more fair and equitable for the patient, because they're no longer controlling prices and keeping them as high. Because why would, because then suddenly you have folks that are coming into the industry and not just making millions of dollars a month, they're making, far more than that. And, I understand, successful business is typically sociopathic, and so they're following, particular sort of guidelines so that they can, stay profitable and solvent and all that other good stuff. But it really, if we're gonna say that this is medicine, there need to be low cost. Like, even the pharmaceutical industry, they were forced to, at some point. I mean, between the pharmaceutical industry and the insurance industry, it was forced so that people who were in the most need could actually have access to some of these medications, at a reasonable price. And so it's a real shame that even if the insurance industry and the traditional pharmaceutical industry aren't deeply embedded in cannabis enough that we're following a similar vein, it's really unfortunate that states, policymakers, and the folks that are sort of formulating this stuff aren't thinking about patients first. They're clearly thinking about business first, and honestly, and not that any other state is perfect in any way, but certainly states like New Hampshire and Florida and other states that basically are allowing an oligopoly in the cannabis business, right? It's not a monopoly, it's an oligopoly. It's a small handful of businesses that are the only ones that are allowed to operate in the space. They inevitably, whether they are conscious of it or not, they're all doing price collusion. They're not creating a competitive environment that's good for the consumer. And it's a shame it's a shame that on the state level that they're allowing something to happen that we've learned a long time ago was not appropriate to be in place, especially when it's not regulated to the point, it's regulated but not regulated to the point where the people who are, like, it's intended to help and assist are actually benefiting from it.
Right, and so I don't know all the ins and outs of it. Again, I have to keep my brain more medical and clinical. I can't get into all that. I do know in New Hampshire, the dispensaries are required to be nonprofit, and I don't know all the ins and outs of that, but from what I understand, that is more of an expense for them, okay? In addition, some of the regulatory things, the way cannabis is in the regulations, increases the cost for them. I do agree with, well, I guess what I should say is I think uniformly across the country, there's that stigma is going to remain until the DEA pulls it out of a Schedule 1. And that's a whole nother, I mean, we're not going to fix that today.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, cannabis right now is in the same, it's in a Schedule 1, it's in the same schedule as heroin and LSD.
Yep.
Even methamphetamine is in a lesser schedule than cannabis, believe it or not. So, that's a problem. That's an ongoing issue. The government knows that. There have been lawsuits against them. I think there's still, some things up and coming with that. To me, to know that the government owns a patent right now on CBD and the medicinal merit of CBD, and they have for like the last 15 years, to know that they have this patent, yet they continue to keep it in that Schedule 1 is disheartening to me. And it's frustrating for me because I think we would be able to really move things along faster. Things will progress much faster. Patients will have much more consistent access. It will be and it will be much more affordable for them once they pull it out of that Schedule 1. But that's a federal fight in the federal courts that you and I aren't going to fix today.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Well, I think as long as there are people out there that are trying to, do positive things with cannabis and trying to help to normalize it and trying to help to reduce the stigma and help people who need cannabis to have access to cannabis like you, I think, we're going to keep making forward progress. And no matter what, as long as we can keep sort of walking forward with it, yes, sometimes there's folks that need us to make like larger bounds, but as long as we can just keep making forward progress with it, then, eventually we're going to get there. And it's because of people like you that are helping to make that happen. And we really appreciate folks like you out there helping to make the world a better place by helping people to have access to cannabis and to learn more about it.
Well, thank you. And I thank you for helping bring more education about cannabis in general. We need all the help we can get. I can tell you again with the stigma, I've been asked many times by reporters and this, do you have some patients who will, speak and this, that, and the other? And it used to be oh yeah, I'll get you like a whole bunch. And this is just over the last 5 years, patients who are huge advocates, okay? But they don't want to speak to the press because they're certified and they, again, there's a stigma. They don't want their employer to know. They don't want people to know. People don't even, there's a limited few who are willing to speak out and be vocal about it because they're concerned about ramifications.
Mm-hmm. One question that we had in the audience was, how are the veterans that you work with affected by the cannabis laws in New Hampshire? We didn't mean to do a spit take.
Okay, so I'm going to be careful about how I answer this, okay? And hopefully I don't start crying. I'm an Army brat. My father was in the military 20 plus years. He was an Army chaplain, okay? Vets, and my husband is a vet. So vets are very important to us. We care for many of them with PTSD, with, the spinal cord injury, the pain from that, the traumatic brain injuries. We are no longer credentialed with the VA because they pulled our credentials because we certified vets for cannabis. So, we're trying to find, special funding for them. But the vets, we take care of many, many of them with PTSD. Cannabis has helped them significantly. I was a big proponent before PTSD was a qualifying condition, speaking at the legislative sessions to get that credential. But the vets have been affected in some negative ways. I do see, depending on their provider, of course, we're more in Manchester, but I get vets from all over the state. There are many providers at the VA who want to help them but can't. They feel their hands are tied because it's federally illegal. Some vets have had medication prescriptions by their providers at the VA discontinued if they have THC in their system. I don't know what the answer is to fix that. But if anyone, a veteran or otherwise, is interested in cannabis, we're happy to help them. But coverage through the VA is not something that they'll allow right now. If we are going to talk with them about cannabis and certify them for cannabis, the VA will not cover it. We actually went to the federal level with that, and they stopped our credential. We were credentialed under the old VA Choice program, and then when they changed to the new one, I think it's Care and Community, they took it away.
Wow, I'm so sorry.
That's a tough subject for me.
Well, I can tell you that there's at least one person in the audience that says that after listening to you, they're going to be more vocal, and I believe they're out of New Hampshire. So, yeah, I think it's not always easy, but I think we just we got to keep trying to ourselves to be consistent and keep doing the good that we're doing, because we do have a positive effect on people, and sometimes even when we're not seeing it or it's frustrating that things aren't going quickly enough, we still have to remember that there's that we are doing good out there.
And I agree with that. It seems like every day you're in the trenches and you feel like you have to be up there with your dukes up. But if I look back over the last 5 years from when New Hampshire started, it was 4.5 years ago when they started the program, we have made strides. It's baby steps, but right now, if that's what we can do, then it's baby steps.
No one told us that being an activist meant that we were being magnanimous. And I remember the first time somebody told me that I was magnanimous, and I didn't know exactly what it meant, and I thought it sounded like such a compliment to me, and I smiled and was like, "Oh, thank you so much." And then I went home later and I looked it up in the dictionary, and I was like, "Oh no, I'm cursed! Like, this is awful! Like, I can't believe it." And really, I think it's nice that there are awards to help to recognize activists, but I think that in the long run, we need to also just recognize that activists are really just selfless souls that are doing things that rarely get recognized, and certainly there's it's really out of it's often at the expense of the activists well-being or financial stability or lots of things, right? And so I think and I think that's why it's good when we have conversations like this, that there can be some people out there that might not always have it in them to I wouldn't wish it being an activist on anyone. Like, it's so necessary, it's so and thank goodness there are people out there that are activists. I wouldn't wish being an activist on anyone, because it's really you're signing up for a very particular.
Yeah.
And it's often thankless, and you're often taking on subject matter that's so controversial that more people end up hating you than appreciating you, and it's really, it's not an easy place to always be. So, and especially for somebody who's also a medical professional, and here in Massachusetts, like I know, I know from a lot of people who I'm very close to, how how tumultuous and how risky of sort of when you're letting those two worlds sort of coincide these days. So really, thank you for being who you are. I know in Massachusetts, a lot of us don't get exposed to what's going on in New Hampshire, and we don't hear a lot about other folks trying to do good out there. But you're compared to a lot of us in Massachusetts, you're fighting like a much more like raw battle right now. Like you're fighting where a lot of folks in Massachusetts were fighting years ago. And at this point, it's become a lot more refined and frankly easy in Massachusetts. I mean, there's still things we have to fight for, but but not at such personal risk to many of us. So, thank you for doing that and not just kind of giving up when it gets difficult.
Well, listen, I can't give up because at the end of the day, it's not just cannabis that I'm doing. It's making sure my patients get what they need to be as comfortable as they can be living with whatever it is that they have. And so if cannabis is part of that, then I'm going to fight for them to have that, just like I have to fight if they need certain medications. So, that's the easy part. My patients make it easy for me.
Oh, it's funny too, by the way. I had I had Uncle Pete out of Maine who, it's like his ears were ringing. So Uncle, he's got a dispensary in Maine, and it's not even like he's telling me how much things are. He's just showing me this big, wonderful bowl of cannabis that he's about to turn into products for folks. I was going to, don't know that you've ever gotten to watch our show before.
No.
So every day we do a contest. Every day we do a giveaway contest, or we have for like the last 70 episodes, 70 days or whatever we've been doing giveaways. We had a giveaway today. I was going to ask Heather Marie Brown if anyone had actually come close to getting the answer for today's contest yet. Because if not, I wanted to change the contest. We had Grant Smith on. Grant Smith is an activist here in Massachusetts. He's such a smart guy that when he told us today, like, here's what the contest idea was, I'm afraid it was like he made it challenging for himself, which means that the bulk of everyone, including myself, there's like no way any of us are going to guess this thing. And it was like there, in the background of him, that he had 3 books on his shelf that you couldn't really see because the camera's a little blurry, right? And he says, okay, everyone, guess at least one of the 3 titles that are on my shelf. And it's like, I don't know which 17th century poet that I'm supposed to guess, or which
I never guessed them books on his show.
Yeah, which I mean, and honestly, when we normally do this contest, the comments flood with guesses. And we do that honestly, it's kind of a crappy thing because this topic sort of came up yesterday after our show with somebody that was surprised when I told them that we actually have 2 shows that run every day. 2 shows in one show. And they were like, what do you mean? And I said, well, we have one show that's a lovely interview show. And then we have another show where we interact with people in the comments and do a giveaway. And you know what I'm saying? And it's really like two different things, and we sort of skip back and forth. Especially when I'm on time, then there's more time for us to skip back and forth.
Right.
So I have a feeling, so I just got a message from Heather Marie Brown who told me the answers, and I can tell you that I have heard of one of them. And I consider myself to be I did some reading back in the day. I've heard of one of these books. So we're going to change it. The reason why I'm bringing this up now with you is because we need to come up with we actually have a bunch of people that came in to watch at the end of the show. Like we can tell how many people are watching. More people than at the beginning. We've now got a lot of people here for the contest at the end. We should come up with your help with, and we don't want to say it out loud because we want to give the answer to people, but we should come up with something, right? And it can be cool and creative, and by the way, here's what I have started doing, which is like, oh, it really throws a thing into this whole like contest thing that people are, is that
Yep.
I make it's not the first person to answer the right answer. It's the last person to answer the right answer. And I put up a timer on the screen, and then they can all go into the comments, and if they think they know what the right answer is, but it's the last person to answer. And there's a weird delay in between when you at home type something in and when it appears on the screen. So people can't even like nail it down. They can't do that whole eBay auction thing like, oh, I'm going to outbid them at the last second, right? Yeah, like, no, so it actually makes it like this, I don't know, like I can just, for me, I know if I were doing it, like somehow it would like,
Right.
it would trigger something in my brain, which I find very interesting. So that all said,
Yep.
some examples of questions in the past that weren't like name the existential book that I have on my shelf from the 17th century in the background, would be stuff like, what's your favorite sea creature? Or it could be like the first concert you ever went to, or it could be, your favorite food. It could be so many different things, and we like to make it something that's not too. It shouldn't be something people have to Google, because then then they have to leave the show, right? It has to be stuff that is sort of like general public zeitgeist stuff. So, any thoughts?
To come up with a question.
Mm-hmm. I can give you some ideas. It could be like and I don't want it to be like it's funny. I was about to be like your first pet's name, and I'm like, wait, that's like a banking security question. I don't want to ask you that. Last four digits of your social security.
Yeah. Let's
Everyone guess Lisa's last four digits, and we'll tell you when you're right. No, but it could be, it could be like your favorite flower. It could be the vacation spot but here's what I'll say is if you have a friend watching, and what I found sometimes when we do this with our guests, when we get them to like help us out, is the guest all of a sudden had like 4 of their friends come and watch the show, and they'll be like, okay, guess my dog's name. And all of a sudden it would be like, the friends are like, Rover, 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 and you get like 8 comments in a row that's all the correct answer, right? Which is why I've changed it to be like the last correct answer, right?
Right.
Not the first one. So that all said, anything maybe come to mind?
You have to understand, I'm not on vacation right now. I'm out of state at my relatives visiting an ailing mother. And I'm looking outside for ideas, and all I see are chickens because we're on a farm.
Oh, all right. So I have an idea. You're going to look at those chickens right now, okay? And It doesn't matter if it's a perfect number, but you got to come up with sort of a final. You're going to count how many chickens there are that you see, and don't give us any hints.
Just that I see, or how many my sister has, because she has a lot.
Oh, okay. Well, if you know a lot number, that's great. I want you, if you can, I would like you to message it. Are you able to message it to Heather?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, Lorna.
Change the rules.
Lorna, I know I changed it, but nobody was even close, Lorna, including you. Lorna, I saw you answer immediately, and I'm like, I bet Lorna knows. Like, she knows Grant. She knows the book that's on there, and that means Lorna's going to win. And Lorna, that's why I asked Heather if anyone had guessed correctly, because if you had guessed correctly, Lorna, I wasn't going to change it. I totally wasn't going to change it, because you would have won. I want you to win.
You had
Lorna, I want you to win.
Before you would have got it, and he just shut it down.
Okay, so I texted it to Heather. She got it.
I feel your pain.
Okay, excellent. And so what I'm going to do, Lorna, you had such good guesses, Lorna. I thought you had guessed the right answer. I'm like, she knows, she's got it. And that's, honestly, I wanted you to win. I was really happy that you were here and you were the first person. I noticed you were the first person to guess. All right, so I'm going to bring up our countdown thing is just going to take me a second here to make it look the way it's supposed to. And ooh, I got to hit save on that thing. No wonder it didn't. I'm like, and by the way, Lisa, can I tell you that people are already guessing like crazy? They've been, and I knew we had a bunch of people watching. Nobody was guessing the books. Lorna and like one other person, and the other person, who I believe was Amanda, kept guessing the Bible. Like she was really hoping it was the Bible. She's like, I can't think of any other book that Grant would have on his shelf. And she was like, please let it be the Bible, right? Nobody, people are even guessing, trying to break it down between adult chickens and baby chicks. I hope that's not one of your friends who's like, there's somebody named...
Only one who knows how many is Heather. I just told her.
Okay, good, because there's somebody named Angela who's like 45 adult chickens and 44 baby chicks. And I'm like...
guessing your cows, but, you know.
All right, so now I'm going to... Ready, everyone, and... There it is. There's your 2-minute timer. So for everyone who's actually watching on the screen, the way that this works is that the last person to guess the correct number, when that timer on the screen runs out, it's it.
JT, stupid.
And by the way, it's the end of the show. So like, it's interesting. It's really interesting. Right around like 11:45 every day. I don't know what is going on, but suddenly we get like another 15, 20 people that jump into the show right at the end. And I think that they're starting to figure out that that when I run the contest this way, that maybe they only care about coming in right at the end. They're like, who cares that you're having amazing conversations? Like, what's the free prize today? Like, we love it. Well, and by the way, that's why we do that, is because there are some people that kind of come for the prizes, and that's okay. Like, if they get to learn a little bit while they're here and get normalized, like, we're totally psyched. We're totally okay with that. We're okay if people just come for the prizes. There's actually, and it's a little disconcerting for me, I think I said it that correctly. So every day of the show, you notice Eric, because he's the NFL athlete, and because I'm just some guy, right? He gets to, like, he could show up in like a tank top, and everyone's going to be like, ooh, he's there in a tank top. I noticed after day 3 that I looked like hot garbage, right? I was like, oh my God, I look horrendous. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to dress up like I used to dress up for work. I'm going to treat this like a thing. I'm going to put my tie on. So every day, I think this is episode 74. By the way, there's 7 seconds left, 6, 5, and Heather's going to be watching for the winner. Heather, you have to watch the screen, by the way. Not the comment stuff. You got to watch the screen. I have a big tie collection, so I wear a different tie every day.
Nice. That's
nice.
And
today's tie, and I'll show it to you. This is your first one. This isn't...
Oh,
no, it's kind of nice, right? It's not too bad.
Some fancy stuff, yeah.
Yeah, it's a Versace tie. I was really lucky. Yeah, and by the way, people talked me into doing a giveaway of my ties the other day, and I'm still all up on my feelings about it. So everyone, you're still guessing. You can stop guessing because it's over. And Heather Marie is going to, oh boy. Heather Marie is going to let us know if somebody got the number. Heather Marie, did anyone get the number?
I mean, she has a lot of chickens.
I didn't even see the number.
Being from New Hampshire, she's got a lot of chickens.
We don't even know the number. Only Heather Marie knows the number. Maybe I need to set the timer again. But Heather Marie should tell me if I need to set the timer again. Heather Marie, I'm going to set the timer again, and why don't you give a hint? I don't know what happened to Heather Marie. Where are you? I told everyone to stop guessing, and then the comments went like dead. It's like crickets. They're like, okay, we'll stop guessing.
You have to watch the comments or the screen or what?
Huh?
She has to watch the comments or the screen or what?
No, well, she was, hey, Heather Marie, we need a hint. Actually, maybe you can get, because I don't know what happened. If somebody guessed it though, I don't want to like ruin the contest. Like that. My
What?
God, when
I just texted her.
when we change stuff with the contest, boy, do people get mad. Boy, do they get mad.
Yeah, us human creatures are like that. We don't like change.
Okay, so
Don't like change.
so we do have a winner, yay! And I guess Heather Marie Brown's about to announce it. While she's getting ready to do that, so
Yep.
She's announcing it in the comments.
I don't know, or she's gonna tell us maybe. Normally she tells us, but she's like keeping me hanging. She's like, we have a winner. Look, she's saying it now. So that's okay, Heather Marie Brown. You can steal our thunder. You can announce the winner and the thing.
Text her. Is there a winner?
She says we have a winner. She's not even telling us. She's telling we're like the last to know because we probably have a delay in what we're seeing. But there is a winner. So Heather Marie, why don't you go ahead and announce it, Heather Marie? Virtual drum roll. While she's it's always, by the way, it's always interesting to figure out who the winner is because we don't have a rule where you can't win more than once. We're not like one of those places that like you have to wait 6 weeks in
So
between.
people come back. So what's the prize today?
The prize is some awesome. Gosh, I'm trying to remember. It was the tincture that you had gotten, which was like the love potion tincture.
Oh, the herbal stuff.
Yeah, so it's Erva CBD. They're calling it Love Potion Tincture. I don't know what else is in it. It's actually we had some, so it kind of looks like this. I'll show it to you.
Nice.
And it's got it's got some good, or maybe it was this one. No, this one's the hangover remedy. And then also some CBD like hand sanitizer stuff. Today's winner is Kelly Holmes, which I don't recognize that name, and that's pretty awesome because that means that she might be a new person.
That you knew.
I love it when new people win.
Kelly.
Because I was,
Miss Kelly.
we've had like, and God bless them, we love our viewers, but we've had some people that have won like 4 or 5 times now. Mm-hmm. Because they know how to play. They're like good gamblers. They're the person that like goes to the casino and is like, I know which machine to sit at. And
It's
then
like somebody who discovered the free casino and they don't tell nobody and they just keep showing up every day.
They'll be happy when the casinos reopen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Congratulations to Kelly. We really appreciate that.
Kelly at? Kelly.
You know what, Kelly? You better be here, and you need to contact Erva Rubin over at Erva.
Because if I contact them first, it's mine. I'm going to be like,
Eric,
I'm Kelly, send it to my address.
Eric does threaten every contest winner that he will take taxes from their prize, which sometimes when we give away edible things means that he's going to like...
Dan and Danny's mom.
Oh, that's awesome.
No, listen.
Not new.
You can't take taxes.
She hit us with the correction. She was like, look, don't be trying to new me. I'm not new.
Well, that's because Kelly, Miss Holmes never comments. She never comments. We don't know she's really here.
That's cool, because now you really get your...
She's not new to us, but she's kind of new to the
taxes.
show.
You understand the taxes then, so you ain't got no problem with that.
So Lisa, before I get to this very last thing, is there, and I know you're an activist, right? So like it's not, well, you're so much more than an activist. What's the right way for people to get a hold of you or follow up with you? How do you want people to do that if they want to keep in touch with you?
That's a great question. The easiest, and the reason I say that is right now we're running Palliativity out of 3 different houses.
Yeah.
So I don't have to say call the office. But the best way, if you call, it ends up in our texting platform.
Okay.
And that, I can give the phone number.
If you read the phone number to me, hold on. I'm going to say call Lisa at... And is it let me guess, it's a 603 number.
Yes.
All right.
603-371.
Yep.
9402. And they're going to get voicemail, and we get that by text.
Okay. Cool. And so I'm pinning that up right now. I can't believe I spelled everything. Did it all right. So for any of you that need to get a hold of Lisa, call that number. You're going to get voicemail, but leave her a message and she'll get back to you. So Lisa, now the really most important thing of this entire show, and I know you've never seen it before, is that at the end of every show.
Why does he always do this?
What's that?
Eric was saying, why do I always do this? At the end of every show,
We don't have to sing with every single person that comes on camera.
So
it's not that.
So
type of thing.
so
People
back
don't
in the
like being put on the spot like that.
Back in the old day, we'd have a guest on, we'd have another guest on. That second guest would say goodbye to us, and then we'd spend like another 10 minutes talking to the folks, and then we'd end the show, right? And normally we wouldn't pick the contest winner with the guest. I was trying to keep it more, buttoned up, and thank you so much, and that was great, and now let's talk about the contest, right? But it's more, I don't know, I think it's more fun, especially since we included you, like to keep you on. And so here's the thing, is for almost every episode now, I think he started doing it a couple of episodes in, Eric finishes the show with a little song, which I think is actually kind of amazing. He by the way, Eric is 28, so he's never...
I know who he is.
Well, but he didn't live with shows where like people sang out at the end.
Yeah.
Right? Like we grew up in an age where like you had like crooners doing like variety shows and like they'd sing out at the end, right? So the fact that he just sort of like naturally started to pick up on this little thing, and it's not a long song, it's only a few seconds long. He made up his own words. There's no music to it, and that's okay.
Right.
And so a lot of times when we still have the guest on with us, I ask the guests if they would like to sing along with Eric. It's very easy. It's a very easy song. If you'd like to sing along with Eric, and then that's how we sort of finish the show. And I know that you've never heard the song before, and that's okay because it's a really easy song.
Okay, so sing it.
All right, so he's going to tell... No, hold on. He's going to tell you the words because if he sings it, I just have to hit the button and then the show's done. Like, that's how we do it, right? So he's going to tell you the words, and then you can both sing it together, and then the show will be done.
Okay.
So this song goes, it's the end of the show. It's time to go. Don't want to talk to y'all no more. Peace.
What's that? Don't want to talk to you. What?
No more.
No more.
Oh, don't no more. Okay.
So it's the end of the show.
It's nice, but then it's rude and then cut.
Right. It's sort of like, it's fun, rude, and the crowd, thankfully, they don't take it personally. No one's ever taken it personally. And they find it endearing. But it's what we do. It's what we've done for like 70-something episodes now. So we kind of have to stick with it.
Let's hit it.
Okay.
Let's hit it.
And that's the end of the show.
You can say the next line.
You say...
I forgot what the next line
See,
is.
everybody, that's okay.
I don't want to go.
I don't want to.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
And that's because we don't want to talk to y'all no more. And then,
Oh.